Let my homeless sister in. She robbed my kid's $2,500 Christmas fund and fled. Her cold confession shocked me to the core. You don't forget the moment your world stops feeling safe. For me, it was a handbag, an empty one, hidden deep in the back of my closet, where no one else was supposed to go. That bag had held $2,500, money I'd spent 10 months quietly saving, sacrifices that looked invisible on the outside, skipping takeout, canceling plans, choosing stress over sleep, all so I could give my three little girls a Christmas worth remembering. A little magic, a few sparkles, some joy, gone. Every last dollar, stolen. And the person who took it? My sister, Sarah. The same Sarah I'd opened my door to. The same one I'd fed, supported, consoled when her life crumbled. The one who came to me with her 3-year-old son in her arms, saying she had nowhere else to go. I let her in, I didn't hesitate. Single mom to single mom. I shared my home, my food, my routine. I took on daycare pickups. I rearranged my life to help her find her footing. I stretched a budget that was already suffocating me. And this was her thank you. She robbed me, not accidentally, not in a moment of desperation. No, she and her boyfriend, Ryan, broke into my locked bedroom. They picked the lock, stepped into the one room I kept as my own, and they stayed there for nearly an hour, rummaging through my drawers, my memories, my life, looking for that one bag. The security footage didn't lie. I watched them, over and over, her eyes darting, lips tight, his hands moving with purpose. Not chaos, precision. Like they had practiced, like they'd done it before. And as I stood there, replaying it again and again, all I could feel was heat, a slow, burning rage, deep and searing, climbing up my chest until I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just theft. This was betrayal soaked in calculation. Sarah hadn't just taken money. She'd taken my daughter's laughter, their excitement, the twinkle in their eyes when they saw presents under the tree. She had ripped that away. She had reached into the sacred space I had carved out of nothing for my children and desecrated it. The confrontation was a blur. At first, the lies. You must have misplaced it. Then the panic. Then the tears. Crocodile ones. Then the excuses. You don't know what I've been through. As if her chaos justified detonating mine. She tried to drag in our parents, spin a sad little web of old grievances, old wounds. Tried to make this about everyone else. But this wasn't about the past. This was about now, about Christmas. About 3 little girls who had done nothing wrong. And her choice, her selfish, callous, irredeemable choice, to rob them of something beautiful. And for what? Fast food, cheap thrills. She later admitted it casually, as if that softened the blow. We just needed a night to feel normal, she'd said. Normal? Normal isn't robbing your sister's closet while she's tucking her daughters into bed. I don't know what broke more that day, my trust or my idea of what family means. But I do know this. That was the last time Sarah ever stepped foot in my house, and the day I stopped confusing blood for loyalty. Because some betrayals are too precise, too cruel, to ever be forgiven. And some scars never stop burning. The weeks following Sarah's arrival were a strange cocktail of forced optimism and a gnawing unease I couldn't quite shake. I threw myself into creating a welcoming environment, buying a little toddler bed for her son, Michael, making sure my girls shared their toys, trying to weave this fractured piece of my family back into something whole. Michael was a sweet kid, all wide eyes and shy smiles, and my daughters, bless their hearts, mostly embraced having a little cousin around. But Sarah was a different story. There was a restlessness about her, a subtle current of discontent that eddied beneath her surface gratitude. Small things started to feel off. Money I'd leave on the kitchen counter for groceries would be slightly less than I remembered. My eldest, Maya, mentioned that Aunt Sarah had borrowed her expensive hair straighteners without asking and returned them with a new chip in the ceramic plate. Insignificant, perhaps, in isolation, but they began to accumulate like tiny cuts, each one a small sting of irritation. Then came Ryan, Sarah's boyfriend. I'd only met him a couple of times before Sarah moved in, and my initial impression hadn't been stellar. He had that kind of swagger that always felt like overcompensation, a way of looking at you like he was constantly sizing you up. Sarah had downplayed his presence, saying he was just supportive. But soon, Supportive turned into him being a near-permanent fixture in my home, especially when I was at work. I'd come home to find him sprawled on my couch, watching my TV, the air thick with the smell of his cheap cologne. I'd told Sarah, gently at first, that I wasn't comfortable with him being there unsupervised, especially with the children. "He's just trying to be there for me, sis," she'd whine, her eyes clouding over with that practiced victimhood I was starting to recognize. "Don't you want me to have some support?" The manipulation was subtle, a little tug on the guilt strings. I relented, but the unease solidified into a cold knot in my stomach. It wasn't just his presence, it was the way things felt when he was around. The atmosphere in the house would shift, become heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. My daughters became quieter, more withdrawn when he was there. One evening, my middle child, 8-year-old Lily, who's usually a chatterbox, came to me with wide, worried eyes. She whispered that she'd seen Ryan looking in my bedroom doorway when he thought no one was watching. "He looked sneaky, Mommy," she'd said, her little brow furrowed. I tried to reassure her, to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but her words echoed my own internal alarms. I started noticing small items out of place in my bedroom, things only I would touch. A book shifted on my nightstand, a perfume bottle moved an inch to the left. Paranoia, I told myself. You're stressed. But the feeling persisted, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. I confronted Sarah again about Ryan, more firmly this time. "He needs to respect my space, Sarah. This is my home, and my bedroom is off limits when I'm not here. And he shouldn't be here every single day." She put on a show of contrition, apologized profusely, promised it wouldn't happen again. For a while, Ryan's visits did become less frequent. The tension in the house eased slightly. I almost allowed myself to believe we'd turned a corner. Almost. The uneasy peace was, predictably, short-lived. The quiet before a storm always is. A few weeks after my firm talk with Sarah about Ryan, I started noticing more blatant disregard for my boundaries. It wasn't just misplaced items anymore. It was a pervasive sense of my personal space being systematically invaded. I'd find my bathroom items, my shampoo, my conditioner, the expensive face wash I splurged on once in a blue moon, nearly empty, far sooner than they should have been. When I'd casually ask Sarah if she'd seen anyone using them, she'd feign wide-eyed innocence. "Oh no, sis, why would I? I have my own stuff." Yet her own stuff seemed perpetually untouched, gathering dust in the small cabinet space I'd cleared for her. My daughters weren't using my things. They had their own kid-friendly versions. The math wasn't mathing, as they say. The excuses were always flimsy, easily offered, and just as easily seen through if you looked hard enough. The issue was, I was tired of looking hard. I was tired of the constant vigilance in my own home. One Saturday, I was deep cleaning, a therapeutic ritual for me, and decided to finally organize the linen closet. Tucked behind a stack of old towels, I found a small, unfamiliar makeup bag. Curious, I opened it. Inside, nestled amongst some cheap lip glosses and a cracked eyeshadow palette, were several items of my own makeup. A high-end mascara I rarely used, a specific shade of lipstick I'd been searching for, even a small travel-sized bottle of my setting spray. These weren't things she could have accidentally borrowed. These were items taken deliberately and hidden away. A cold wave of anger, mixed with a weary sense of resignation, washed over me. It wasn't the value of the items. It was the deceit, the casual thievery from someone I was sacrificing so much for. I confronted Sarah, placing the bag on the kitchen table between us. Her face went through a flicker of emotions, surprise, then a flash of anger, before settling on sullen defensiveness. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "It's just a little makeup. You have so much. I barely have anything nice. What's the big deal?" The sheer entitlement in her voice, the way she twisted her theft into my supposed lack of generosity, was infuriating. "No, the big deal, Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "is that it's my makeup, and you took it without asking and then hid it. That's stealing." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, you're so uptight. Fine, I'm sorry. Happy?" It was the kind of apology that wasn't an apology at all, just words uttered to end an uncomfortable conversation. The final straw, the one that made me realize this situation was untenable, and that I needed concrete proof of her incursions into my private space, happened a week later. I had a small, inexpensive digital alarm clock on my nightstand. It had a specific way of displaying the time, a particular dimness setting I preferred. I came home from a late shift, exhausted, and as I glanced at the clock, I noticed the brightness was turned all the way up, glaringly so. And the alarm, which I never set because my phone was my alarm, was inexplicably set for 3 a.m. My blood ran cold. There was absolutely no reason for anyone, especially my children, to be in my room, let alone messing with my alarm clock. Sarah had been home all day with Michael, supposedly. The only logical conclusion was that she, or possibly Ryan during one of his now less frequent but still occurring visits, had been in my room. Snooping. Why? What were they looking for? The unease that had been a constant hum in the background of my life now screamed into a full-blown alarm. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the image of that altered clock burning in my mind. The feeling of violation was profound. My bedroom was my sanctuary, the one place in the house that was truly mine, and it felt tainted. I knew then with absolute certainty that her word meant nothing. Her apologies were hollow. I couldn't trust her. And if I couldn't trust her with the small things, how could I trust her under my roof, around my children, with my life essentially open to her? The decision solidified in the dark. Without telling anyone, not even my closest friend, the next day I ordered a small, easily concealable security camera online. It felt extreme, a step I never imagined I'd take against my own sister. But the alternative, living with this constant, eroding suspicion, this feeling of being slowly undermined in my own home, was no longer an option. I needed to know. I needed to see. The camera arrived in a discreet brown package. Setting it up felt clandestine, almost shameful, like I was violating some unspoken family code, even though it was my family code, my sanctuary being violated. I placed it on a high shelf in my bedroom, partially obscured by a couple of old photo albums. Its tiny lens a silent, unblinking eye aimed at my closet and the general room area. I told myself it was a temporary measure, a way to either confirm my growing fears or hopefully alleviate them. Deep down, I think I already knew what it would show. The first few days, the footage was unremarkable, just me coming and going, my daughters occasionally popping in to ask a question. Then, on the third day, I fast-forwarded through the footage from while I was at work, my heart hammering against my ribs. And there she was, Sarah, slipping into my room like a wraith, her movements quick, furtive. She didn't rifle through drawers or toss things about. Instead, she moved with a chilling sort of precision, her eyes scanning, her hands occasionally touching things. My jewelry box, the papers on my nightstand, the edge of my pillow. She even picked up a framed photo of my girls, stared at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before placing it back down, slightly askew. It wasn't the actions of someone looking for something specific to steal, not then. It was proprietary. Like she was assessing, cataloging, absorbing the details of my most private space. It felt like a different kind of violation, more insidious than outright theft. It was a quiet claiming of territory, a blurring of boundaries that made my skin crawl. I confronted her that evening, trying to keep my voice even, though inside I was seething. I didn't tell her about the camera, not yet. "Sarah," I began, "we need to talk about you going into my bedroom when I'm not here." She immediately went on the defensive, her voice sharp. "What are you talking about? I haven't been in your room. Why would I go in your room?" The lie was so blatant, so effortless, it took my breath away. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I said, my voice colder now. "I know you were in there today. My things were moved." She scoffed, folding her arms. "Oh, please. You're probably just being paranoid. Or maybe one of the girls went in. You know how kids are." She tried to deflect, to gaslight, but I stood my ground. "No, it wasn't the girls. It was you. And I'm telling you right now, it needs to stop. My bedroom is my private space. If it happens again, you'll have to find somewhere else to live. I mean it." Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of something ugly, resentment, anger, passing through them before she smoothed her expression into one of wounded offense. "Fine," she snapped. "God, you're making such a big deal out of nothing. But whatever. I won't go in your precious room again." She then stormed off to the room she shared with Michael, slamming the door behind her. The air vibrated with her resentment. For a week or so after that confrontation, the camera footage showed nothing. Sarah pointedly avoided my end of the hallway. Ryan's visits also seemed to cease completely, which was a small relief. I started to breathe a little easier, cautiously optimistic that my ultimatum had worked. I even considered taking the camera down. What a fool I was. The calm was just her regrouping, recalibrating. Then came the day that would change everything. The day the charade of sisterly support and gratitude was finally, irrevocably shattered. I'd worked a double shift and came home bone-tired, looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and my bed. As I walked past my closed bedroom door, I noticed it was slightly ajar, just a sliver. My heart instantly lurched. I never left my bedroom door open, not even a crack. It was a habit ingrained from years of needing my own quiet space away from the joyful chaos of three young children. A cold dread, sharp and immediate, pierced through my exhaustion. I pushed the door open slowly. The room looked normal at first glance, but then my eyes landed on my closet. The door, one of those mirrored sliding ones, was also open, just an inch or two, but enough to scream that something was wrong. I always kept it fully closed. My gaze swept the room, a frantic internal inventory starting. Everything seemed to be in its place. But the wrongness of those two open doors resonated like a silent alarm. My hands were starting to tremble. I walked over to the closet, my reflection a pale, worried ghost in the mirror. I slid the door open further, my eyes scanning the neatly arranged shelves, the hanging clothes. And then I saw it. Or rather, I didn't see it. One of my handbags, a specific dark blue leather one, was missing. It wasn't an expensive designer bag, nothing flashy, but it was the bag where I kept my emergency cash. And more importantly, the money I had been meticulously saving for months for Christmas. $2,500. Cash. Hidden away, I'd thought securely, tucked under a pile of older, less used bags in the very back corner of the top shelf. It wasn't in an obvious spot. You would literally have to dig to know it was there, or to be systematically searching for something valuable. My breath hitched, my stomach plummeted. The room started to spin. 1, my emergency money was gone. 2, the money specifically, painfully saved for my children's Christmas, the fund that represented so many skipped lunches and turned down overtime shifts so I could be home more, was gone. 3, Sarah, who I'd explicitly warned, was suddenly, conspicuously, nowhere to be found. Her bedroom door was open, Michael's little shoes gone from by the mat. A wave of nausea so intense washed over me that I had to grip the doorframe for support. It couldn't be. Not this. Not from her. But the sick certainty churning in my gut was undeniable. Right then and there, I knew. Sarah had taken it. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely operate my phone, the slick screen blurring before my eyes. I fumbled with the app for the security camera, my breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps that did little to calm the frantic hammering in my chest. The live feed was just my empty, silent room, a deceptive tranquility that made my blood boil. I scrolled back, my thumb skittering across the digital timeline to the hours I'd been slaving away at work, providing for the very people who were, at that exact moment, likely plotting this betrayal. And there it was, the truth stark and undeniable, playing out in grainy, unforgiving color. Sarah, my sister. She didn't just slip in this time, with the pretense of looking for something innocent. Oh no, this was calculated, a brazen invasion. And she wasn't alone. She was with Ryan, his presence a dark shadow clinging to her. My stomach twisted into a tighter, more painful knot. I watched, my body rigid with horrified disbelief, as Ryan jiggled something metallic and thin at my bedroom door lock. A credit card? A lockpick he carried for such occasions? And then the door, my locked door, swung open with sickening ease. They were breaking in, like common criminals. They moved with a disgusting, rehearsed efficiency that spoke of prior discussions, perhaps even prior incursions I hadn't detected. Ryan, the useless freeloader, immediately went to my dresser, his hands rifling through my drawers, pulling out personal items, inspecting them with a casual disdain before tossing them aside. Meanwhile, Sarah, my own flesh and blood, made a beeline for the closet, her movements betraying a chilling familiarity with my private space. She didn't hesitate, didn't even glance around. She knew exactly where to look. I watched her climb onto a small step stool I kept in there, her form silhouetted against the dim light, and reach with predatory certainty to the back of the top shelf, pulling out the dark blue leather handbag. My handbag. My children's Christmas. The future smiles I'd envisioned, now snatched away by her greedy hands. She opened it, peered inside, and then the camera caught the moment that will forever be seared into my memory. Her face broke into a sickening, triumphant smirk as she held up the wad of cash, showing the contents to Ryan. He gave a low whistle, visible even on the silent footage, a predatory glint in his eyes, and patted her on the back as if she'd just won a prize. They spent another agonizing, interminable 45 minutes in my room, not just taking the money, but going through everything. My letters from old friends, the journals where I poured out my deepest fears and hopes, my clothes, even my underwear drawer. They touched everything, their grubby entitlement defiling every corner of my private world, leaving a slimy trail of betrayal in their wake. They even had the unmitigated audacity to try and put things back, to make it look like they'd never been there. Their movements clumsy and rushed now, a pathetic attempt to cover their disgusting tracks. The rage that had been simmering within me for weeks, for months, ever since she'd moved in with her air of wounded entitlement, finally exploded. It was a white-hot inferno, consuming every rational thought, leaving only the burning need for confrontation, for justice. I wanted to scream, to break something, to feel a physical release for the emotional devastation that was tearing through me like shrapnel. How could she? After everything I had done for her son. I immediately tried calling Sarah, my fingers stabbing at the screen. Straight to voicemail. Of course, the coward. I sent a barrage of texts, each one more furious, more desperate than the last. Where is my money, Sarah? You thieving, heartless snake! How could you do this to my kids, to your own nieces? Silence. Only the deafening roar of my own betrayal answered. 2 eternal hours later, just as I was about to dial 911, steeling myself for the inevitable fallout, I heard their car pull up outside. Sarah and Ryan. They strolled in, actually laughing about something, their voices carefree, Michael trailing behind them, looking tired and blissfully unaware of the storm he was walking into. The sight of their casual, unbothered demeanor, as if they hadn't just shattered my world, sent another shockwave of pure, unadulterated fury through me. I confronted them the second they stepped through the door, my voice trembling with a rage so profound it was a miracle I could even form words. Where is it, Sarah? Where is my $2,500? She had the utter gall to look surprised, then deeply offended, her eyes wide with feigned shock. What on earth are you talking about? I honestly don't know what you mean. Ryan stood just behind her, a smug, challenging smirk plastered on his face. Yeah, what's up? You lose something? He drawled, his tone dripping with insolence. The disrespect was a physical slap in the face. Don't you dare play dumb with me, I finally yelled. Years of swallowed frustrations, of being the bigger person, of accommodating her endless needs, finally erupting. I know you took it. I know you and your worthless boyfriend broke into my room and stole my kids' Christmas money. My kids. Sarah's face crumpled instantly into her well-rehearsed look of tearful, wounded innocence. How can you accuse me of something so horrible, so vile? I would never. You must have misplaced it. You're always so stressed, always losing things. The gaslighting was instantaneous, reflexive, a disgusting testament to her manipulative nature. But I wasn't backing down, not this time. Not when the evidence was irrefutable. Oh, I didn't misplace it, I said, my voice now dangerously low, dripping with a venom that surprised even myself. And I have proof. Irrefutable proof. I have the entire disgusting act on camera, Sarah. Every single second. You and your low-life boyfriend picking my lock, ransacking my room, pawing through my things, and stealing from my children. Her eyes widened, the fake tears drying up as if by magic. The color drained from her face, leaving it a pasty, shocked white. Ryan's smug smirk finally faltered, replaced by a flicker of genuine fear. Caught, red-handed, the silence that followed was thick, heavy, pregnant with her dawning, cornered animal panic and my unyielding, righteous fury. Sarah stumbled back as if struck, her face a mask of disbelief. Ryan, ever the opportunist, tried to step forward, his voice a low snarl. Now, hold on a minute. But I cut him off, my gaze fixed on my sister, the betrayer. You have until the end of the day, Sarah, I stated, my voice as cold and hard as the lump of ice in my chest. Every single cent of that $2,500 is to be back in my hand, or I swear to God, I will press charges. I will give the police that footage, and you both will answer for this. The threat hung heavy in the air. Sarah started to blubber, actual tears this time, thick and ugly. You couldn't. I'm your sister. What about Michael? She wailed, trying to use her son as a shield, a bargaining chip. The audacity was nauseating. You should have thought about Michael before you decided to steal from my children, I retorted, my voice rising. You have family, You have parents? Call them. Maybe they can bail you out of the mess you created. She did call them, right there. Her voice a hysterical mess of twisted truths and outright lies, painting me as the villain, the unreasonable one. I heard my dad's tired, exasperated voice on the other end, then my mom's sharper tones. But I wasn't having it. I grabbed the phone. Stay out of this! I barked into the receiver. Both of you! You weren't there for her when she needed you, and you sure as hell have no right to defend her now when she's clearly, unequivocally in the wrong. Unless you're offering to pay back the $2,500 she stole. That shut them up fast. By 8 p.m., the money hadn't reappeared. My heart heavy but my resolve firm, I called the police. I explained everything, my voice surprisingly steady, and emailed them the footage while the dispatcher was still on the line. By the time the patrol car pulled up, Sarah and Ryan, those cowardly thieves, had vanished, jumped in his beat-up car, and sped off into the night, leaving Michael behind without a second thought for his well-being. They were on the run, but they wouldn't run far, not from this.